Good morning, Mr. Pepperman.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, how about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. All right, let's see. Does this work this morning? Burley, can you hear me? Perfect. Everybody on Zoom can hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool, thanks, Abby. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I've got a couple of things that I've got to go over first, and then we'll get started. Cool. Cool. Okay, so if everybody saw, most of you have taken the exam already, but I had to extend the exam through tonight, so it's open currently. If anybody wanted to get on, for those who have taken the exam and it's graded, if you felt like that you wanted to redo it, you totally could do that. If you had a second attempt, you can get on and do that through this evening. It's open until 11:59 tonight. Overall, I think that you all did a great job. Those of you who have taken it. So I mean, honestly, it wasn't, I was fairly happy with everything. There was that second question that I think I had a lot of people who, anyway, that one seemed to be an issue, but I tried to grade the second question a little more lenient just because obviously that is my fault when I've got so many people that are having problems with that question. So Friday I have something that has just come up, and so I'm going to cancel class on Friday. Just right now. So I think it's the only way that we can make it work. So no class on Friday, so that I can make it to another meeting. I would suggest that if you have not done discussions, or if you've got missing assignments, use Friday to get those things done. Okay. And if you're up to date, then you've got a free day to maybe get ready for week 10, which is universalizing religions next week, which is really cool. That's it. I love that this lecture. Like, this is a really good one. So no class on Friday. I will not be here, and I'll make sure to tell our camera team today as well. Remember to do that. Okay. Any questions before we get started this morning? Okay. Here's what I'd like to do. Let's go here. Okay. I'm going to run through a couple pieces of the Roman Republic. I got to remember that I did this on Monday, but some of you did not hear it. So what we are doing today are the two major empires running concurrently around the world at roughly 200 BCE, right? So you've got the Roman Empire that is rolling on, and you have the Han Dynasty, which is rolling on, which I'm showing you here a map of that empire here, okay? We're going to talk about Rome first, and then we'll move into the Han Dynasty. There are some similarities, and we'll talk about those in the end, but I want to go through both of them separately, and then we'll go back and talk about the similarities, okay? So the Etruscans start kind of the Roman Empire. That's as you start to build, you've got this, the Etruscans that are kind of the middle between Greece, Greek culture, and Roman, this new Roman culture that's starting to come out, this burgeoning culture. It is important to understand that they have a self-governing government with fortified city-states and an agrarian aristocracy. And the reason that that's important is because we're going to see them build upon those pieces. So the Etruscans are that middle ground between the two, and they're going to really open up the Roman Empire, okay? Or begin it, if you will. Religion is polytheistic, it's ritualistic, it's influenced by the Greeks, and that's where we're getting this melding of the two, right? Greeks and Romans through the Etruscans is starting to build this Roman culture, okay? One of the things that I always like to bring up is that we're starting to see depictions of husbands and wives on pottery, which suggests the importance of husbands and wives. We haven't really we've seen men and we've seen women, but now we're seeing husbands and wives on pottery. We're seeing that women are appearing in public. They took part in athletic contests, and they're literate. And so we're starting to see that women are taking a more active role. They're being given more active roles, okay? However, when it comes to Roman society, they are still subservient to men, okay? As we transition from Etruscans to Roman society, Romans start, they kind of they model the Etruscan government so that it's similar in some ways, okay? They elect officers to govern, they have an emperor, they have a senate and an assembly. The Senate serves for life, the assembly is made up of citizens by majority rule, okay? As we transition from Etruscan to Roman society, the family takes on more of a traditional role that we think of. The father's the head of the household. The household is supposed to resemble the state, which is similar to what we get when you talk about Aristotle, right? Aristotle believes that this is the way that it should be. The father could sell the children. If he were in debt, he could sell the children into slavery. He could not sell his wife. Okay. There's this idea of ancestral worship. Ancestral worship is based off your father's ancestry, and so you are worshiping your father's ancestry. Your mother's ancestry is present, but you're not worshiping it like you would your father's ancestry. And so as you would walk into the home of aristocracy, right, or the higher social hierarchy, you would find statues of your father's ancestry in a little alcove right next to the front door as you came into into a foyer, and you would know these people, okay? And so you would have this statue of maybe a grandfather or great-grandfather, but it would always be on your father's side, okay? Women were ruled by men, but they had a greater inheritance from their family that was given to them when they married. They could keep that inheritance if they continued to stay with their husband. Okay. The husband would lose that inheritance if he divorced his wife, but he would get to keep the dowry. The wife, if the husband divorced the wife, would keep the inheritance. Okay. As long as it wasn't her fault. However, men would usually find ways for it to be the wife's fault, obviously, if they were getting divorced. Upper class women had greater influence and respect. Their major goal was to raise children, keep accounts, and supervise slaves. They were an advisor on the family council, but ultimately the father, right, had the last say. So that is Roman society. We see that as Roman society transitioned, we see the Roman Republic build up. They create the Senate and the Assembly. The Senate is made up of prominent wealthy families. It runs states' foreign policy and finances, so foreign affairs, as the Senate does. The Assembly is broken into classes according to wealth. And the Assembly in the Roman Republic, you would have representation for like slaves. Slaves would be represented at this point in the Assembly. They were elected. They voted on bills. They made decisions on war and peace. And that's really the way that the Roman Republic is set up at this time, right? Senate and Assembly, you have a Roman emperor who's over everything, and then you have the Senate and the Assembly. Generally, the Senate is made up of younger aristocracy, always men. The Assembly is all classes because it's made from majority rule. It's a lot of different people. Okay. The early Roman Republic is a melding of Greek and Roman culture. The religion is similar. So, well, before we get to religion, it's bilingual. Greek and Roman spoken in the Roman Republic, okay? They studied Greek literature. This is an important piece because studying Greek literature helps you to understand history. Okay, and that's the reason that they're doing it. This is where we start to get really the basis of a humanities education. Okay. Religion is influenced by Greek mythology. The family is at the center, and there is little role of morality in Roman religion. Okay, so we think of religion today as a way to push morality, and that was not the case in the Roman Republic. Okay, in the past, I've had you all read, or I've had this class read, Excess and Pleasure in the Roman Empire. It is an article that was written in the 90s about prostitution, sex slaves. I mean, it is an interesting read, but what it is saying, what it's suggesting is that there is no morality really when it comes to religion in the early Roman Republic. Okay, that's not really a thing. That is something that comes out of Christianity, that we start to see this idea of morality being pushed. Okay, and then religion is also being used as a form of patriotism. So what's fascinating about this is that you've got Greek and Roman gods being pushed throughout the Roman Republic, and you are to adhere to the god of your region or your town. Okay, so you're going to have a god that Yeah, you believe in all of these gods, you worship all of them, but the one that you on a weekly basis go to the temple and worship is the one that is over your town. And that gets, all of a sudden we push this idea of patriotism through religion. That's going to happen later on. We'll see in the next few weeks if that happens, especially next week. But patriotism, this is how we start to see different people showing up to the Olympics, for instance, and they are representing their town, and it's not necessarily their town as much as it is their god that they worship. Okay. I think I talked about education on Monday, but education in the Roman Republic is done in the home. It's mostly boys. In the beginning, you learn to read, write, calculate, and farm. Okay, those are the major things that you're going to learn. You're going to learn your ancestral history. Your education is going to be practical, vocational, practical and vocational. Okay. And this was to make boys more pious and patriotic, law-abiding, and respectful of tradition. What's fascinating about this is that when we talk about history and learning history, that's generally what we're saying that history is for, right? It's supposed to make you good citizens, good informed citizens, which I believe it does that. But we're learning this back here at the early Roman Republic is that we're teaching education so that you can be a well-informed citizen, but a law-abiding citizen, right? Upper class women become educated. They're taught usually by tutors at home, and they learn how to write, read and write. They become writers and poets, but most of them have to use pen names, male pen names. They can't write under women's names. Okay. We have a civil war in the early Roman Republic, which is kind of the downfall of the early Roman Republic, and that's what leads to the Roman Empire. With the Civil War, the Roman Emperor rather, takes control of what's going on, and the reason that he takes control is because of the Civil War. He needs somebody to really be controlling at the top, right? And so as he does that, in order to control everybody in the middle, he also needs to put these borders out on the western and northern front. And in extending that border and putting a military out there, he is getting large land grabs, right? Like the emperor is getting out there and putting military out there. Well, those people on the periphery are either being conquered or they're assimilating quite quickly. This means more conquered people. You've got a huge military out on the periphery. And this makes the emperor the absolute ruler. And that is what creates Roman Republic to Roman Empire. Okay. So you've got a strong Roman emperor. That Roman emperor controls the Mediterranean Sea, which controls trade, right? We've talked about this before. Once the Roman emperor can control the Mediterranean, he controls everything. So he controls growth through trade and prosperity. And then we've talked about this before, but everybody becomes Roman. So there are multiple languages, multiple ethnicities within the Roman Empire, and they are all Roman. Okay. With this new ruling emperor, we see lessened roles in assemblies and a larger role of the Senate. Now, if you remember, the Senate is made up of the aristocracy, and the assemblies were voted on by the people. So the people are having less of a say as assemblies are lessened and the Senate is getting more of a say, and they're the ones who are running, right? I mean, say what you will, but I mean, I feel like it's no different than where we're at today, right? It's not like everybody, like honestly, anybody could be a senator or a congressman, right? You've got to have money, you've got to find some way, and this is the way that we've done it, is that they in the Roman Empire, they lessen the role of assemblies, which is voted on by the people, and the Senate is not necessarily appointed, it's voted on, but only certain people can run, okay? The larger role of the Senate is wealthy young men of good character. I always think that's funny, of good character. So in order to be in the Senate, they would say you had to be a good young man of good character. But what the emperor does is he does divide the empire into regions, and those regions are then run by public officials that are there locally. They have their own police and their own fire departments. These people regulated grain and water. And so at a local level, you have some sort of control, okay? There is more control in local municipalities and tribal governments. And then there is this idea of the large army that's protecting the frontier, the northern frontier and the western frontier. And this is a big piece that I want you to understand as well, which is that the army changes from what we have seen. It becomes professional. There are 20-year enlistments. You get paid as a soldier, as well as you get a pension. The pension could be paid out in money and land, or a combination of money and land. This is interesting because if you have devoted your 20 years to the government as a soldier, there was no way for you to gain land. And so for them to give you land and money after 20 years means that you could continue to make money, or at least live off of your own land. Some people didn't have that, right? As these soldiers, this professional military went out and was on the periphery, they're marrying those women and they're creating a stronger Roman culture, which strengthens Rome, okay? Now, the fall of the Roman Empire is interesting, because, and we'll talk about this probably next week, but or in 2 weeks. But the fall of Rome, the demise of it is partly because of this, right? The Roman Empire continues to grow and it gets too big, and they had to split the empire into two different emperors, which is the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. And now you've got too many people, as well as that we have, for a long time, they have this professional military, but after a while, people don't stop joining the military. And so then they start hiring mercenaries. And as they hire mercenaries, those mercenaries don't have any loyalty to the Roman Empire. And so they're up for the highest bidder, right? I mean, they'll do whatever that's outside, whoever is going to pay them more. And so that hurts. You have all of these people in the Roman Empire who are not Roman, who in the beginning identify as Roman, but as you continue to collect all of these people and as you raise taxes and different things, they get frustrated and then they revolt, okay? And that's gonna be the demise of the Roman Empire. Yeah, Brandon.
Christian, weren't the mercenaries like hated among people because of the fact that they were being paid?
So Brandon's asking if they were hated, the mercenaries were hated among people. That's an interesting question, because what happens is that they're not so much. Okay, let's start here. it's similar to today with anti-American sentiment, I guess you could say. This idea that things have gotten so well in the United States that now we can start to think about other ideas, right? And so as we start to think about other ideas, you have people that are like, hey, you know what? I don't like what America has done at certain points in history. And so then we argue and fight about that, right? And that's what's going on in the Roman Empire as well. So as people have seen the Roman legion go out and fight and be barbaric, then people are like, I don't want to be a part of the military. And so they drop back. And so it's not necessarily that they're upset at the mercenaries themselves, they're upset with the government in general.
No,
And that seems to be what it is.
I'm talking about the people who do like the military. The mercenaries in the military get treated like crap because they're only there to get paid, not there to keep the country safe.
Oh, I don't know about that. That could be.
Because I know that I heard about mercenaries being treated badly because of the fact that they're not there to keep the country safe. They're there to get their paycheck.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. Just the mercenaries, it's not like there's like 100 mercenaries. What happens is the Roman legion is like losing people, like because nobody's enlisting. And so then they're hiring mercenaries, like warring bands of tribes out on the periphery to come in and do this. So it's not necessarily like I'm here because I love the Roman Empire and you're not. It's, oh, we have this huge platoon or whatever, right, that comes in and they are part of the mercy. So maybe, I mean, it could totally be that. That I don't know.
I know nowadays they are hated.
All right, so let's move into, see if I can pull this up. There we go. The Han Empire. So this is the Han Empire here. Ultimately, what it looks like. It comes out of the Qin Dynasty right before it. The Han Dynasty is the longest running dynasty to rule over China, which is roughly 200 BCE to 220 CE. It's briefly split by the Red Eyebrow Rebellion. Two different imperial cities. There are two different imperial cities, and it's split like right in here. And you have the Eastern and the Western empires at one point in time, similar to the Roman Empire. The Qin Dynasty united many of the warring states during this period. So the Qin Dynasty, right before the Han Dynasty, there are all of these different warring states, and they're warring together, and the Qin Dynasty comes in and takes over and unifies all of them, okay? And we'll get into, well, let's talk about that. So with that being said, you have, I have their names here. I thought I did. Yeah, okay, so the Qin Dynasty, they unify all of this, but then they have this emperor who is not a bad guy. He just wants to live forever. He wants to be the emperor forever. And so he starts taking elixirs, trying to find a way, a cure to be immortal. And most historians believe now that he was probably either poisoned or drank some bad elixir, and he dies suddenly. His son takes over after him, and his son is extravagant, spending lots of money. The problem is that he's not really into the government piece of it, and so he keeps turning over control to his advisor, his childhood advisor, and his advisor takes advantage of this, and he ousts the son, becomes the emperor, and then raises taxes so that he can live more extravagantly. Okay, these taxes lead to a civil war. This civil war then is fought by the peasants, and the peasants, one of them is Liu Bei. Okay, Liu Bang is an interesting fellow. He grows up as a very poor person. He becomes sheriff of his town. One day, he is transporting prisoners and loses one of them. And knowing that he will be executed for losing one of them, he frees all of the prisoners that are with him. They pledge allegiance to him, and they all go into hiding. They become bandits. And when the Civil War breaks out, they're like, hey, we're in. Like, let's be a part of this. And they join this thing. Liu Bang rises through the ranks. He becomes an admiral. He becomes an admiral. And they fight this Zhao Gao, who is the advisor to the emperor's son, okay, who is now the emperor. They fight him. They beat him back to his palace, where then they kill him there in battle, and Liu Bang becomes the king of Han, okay, which is his township that he's going to be over. So he becomes the king of Han. There's a puppet government kind of put in place, and over the next few years, Liu Bang shows that he's got real leadership, and he becomes emperor. So from nothing to emperor. As emperor, he is exactly how he was with these prisoners. Okay. He frees slaves in the empire. He lowers taxes. He promotes peasants to the highest ranks in government. He doesn't install civil service exams. That's not what they're called. But basically, he is like at the beginning of, he comes up with an exam that you would take to show that you could be in civil service, even as a peasant. You don't have to be in the aristocracy to work your way up. We're going to show where that goes here in a minute. But probably the worst, and I almost hate to say that it's the worst, but one of the things that he does is he disbands the military. Okay. His thinking is that people are generally good, and if you lower taxes and help them when they're in need, that you don't need a military. You don't need a military force to push your ideals or values. Okay. So lowered taxes, freed slaves, promoted peasants to the highest ranks of government, and disbanded the military. He also splits the empire into two at this point. So this is where you get the Eastern and the Western empires. And they have peace and stability for a long time, economic stability, okay? The problem is, and it's not really a problem, but out on the periphery, especially out here, you see this weird like piece that runs off here. This was not theirs. So this was cut off right around here. And these people out here were not Chinese. They did not identify as Chinese, okay? And Liu Bang, builds a relationship with them. At the time, it's seen as embarrassing, okay? The people are like, no, you don't understand. We are Chinese. They are not Chinese. And Liu Bang is like, no, we need to incorporate these people. And so it grows the empire, but it also, this is the Silk Road coming in. And these people defend the Silk Road, which is why you get the Han Dynasty clear out into here. They're defending any trade coming in. And as that happens, they become Chinese, Han Chinese, okay? That's why it's embarrassing to the people who have grown up here, who live here, and they identify as Han Chinese. Now, we still have people today who identify as Han Chinese. 85% of people in China identify as Han Chinese still. I mean, this is 1,800 years ago, and they're still saying that they identify as Han Chinese. This is a big dynasty. But at the time, These people were like, no, these people on the periphery can't be Chinese. And Liao Bang is like, no, look, we're going to bring them into the empire. We need them. So they're going to be Chinese. They're going to identify as Chinese. Okay. So they come in, which also brings peace and economic stability. Okay. Prosperity as they're defending the Silk Road. So Liao Bang dies. I am unsure about this, okay? And it doesn't say it in the book. I've just read it in other places. So the next emperor is an empress after him. Some suggest that it was a mistress of his, and that's what I'm not sure about. So take that for what it's worth. But it wasn't his wife. Could have been a mistress. It might not have been. He seems like he's a pretty good guy, but that doesn't mean that it's not your mistress that becomes empress after him. But she takes over. She then leaves the empire to another female who brings in her brother-in-law. Her brother-in-law is Wang Meng, and he takes over, and he's not a great guy, okay? He takes land from being private ownership to being the government's. So he takes away all land property and turns it into all land is now the state's land, and he increases taxes. This leads to the rise of the Red Eyebrow Rebellion. The Red Eyebrow Rebellion is fascinating in that this is a bunch of peasants who start marking their eyebrows with red to show that they are in defiance of the empire. Okay, that's why it's called the Red Eyebrow Rebellion. And these peasants fight, and somehow they continue to beat back the empire. And I'll guarantee you that it has to do with disbanding the military in the beginning. Right now, you're trying to find people to fight in the military because you haven't kept that going. You disbanded the military, and now the Red Eyebrow Rebellion, these peasants are killing you. So they take control, the Red Eyebrow Rebellion, the peasants take control of the empire after defeating Wang Meng, who they kill in battle. He dies, they take control, but they're peasants and they don't understand how to lead a government. And so they install several puppet governments trying to make it work, and they don't know how to make it work, okay? And it's all because they're not organized. They have no idea of how to run a government. They were so passionate about keeping their land that they were able to fight through. So Liao Zhu takes control, okay? And he reunites all of these areas, which had broken into city-states again. He reunites them underneath the Han Dynasty, or underneath that empire. And he it's roughly over a 10-year period, because there are a bunch of emperors, self-identified emperors, who take control, and Liao Zhu takes control and doesn't really necessarily defeat them. He does defeat some, but basically he unifies the Han Dynasty back again into the Han Empire. And he promotes education, personal land ownership, and social mobility. So he goes right back to what Liao Bang had said, right? Look, everybody can have your land back. We're going to be educated. I'm going to educate you. And this is going to provide some social mobility so that you can rise through the ranks. And he's the one that actually installs a civil service exam. He's the one that takes what Liao Bang had done about 100 years earlier and starts saying, look, we need to find a way that people at the bottom, peasants, could work their way into government. One of his most trusted advisors had been a pig farmer, had grown up as a pig farmer, but took the civil service exam, was able to become the emperor's trusted advisor. Okay. Liao Zhu also uses these people in the periphery to protect the Silk Road, which then also increases prosperity. and things get really good. Peace, prosperity throughout the Han Dynasty, roughly 100. So the Red Eyebrow Rebellion starts at 9 AD or CE. Okay, so at 9 to 23 is the Red Eyebrow Rebellion. Liao Zhu takes over about 25 AD or CE, and things go great for roughly 100 years. And then things don't go so well. The later half of the empire, the empire is helping the poor. It's helping farmers during times of climate change. The empire is helping all of these things until you get an emperor in there that isn't willing to do that. And once that happens, you start to see civil wars again. And in the later, around 200 to 215, we see climate change. And instead of the empire, this is going to sound like it's today. Instead of the empire saving money, and they had a bloated bureaucracy. So they were paying all of these people and not saving money for times of famine. And famine rolls through, and instead of taking care of the people, the government then taxes those people. So they increase taxes, they take land away to pay for their bloated bureaucracy. That incites civil war, and that is the end of the Han Dynasty at 220. Okay, there's a lot of different, and obviously I'm putting a lot of time into such a, what we've only been able to talk about this for 20 minutes. So there's a lot more to this. I'm trying to give you the highlights of everything, but that's basically what happens is you get several different civil wars at the end of the Han Empire, which finally break it up, and that's the end of the Han Dynasty. But both empires rolling together. So let's talk about just briefly what that means here in the end. You've got both empires are growing exponentially, like they're growing so fast, and they're bringing these people in the periphery. And in the beginning, that's great. What it does is it creates this melding culture in both, right? You're bringing these people in, you're getting prosperity. When people have a say, they feel like that they're invested. I shouldn't say they feel like they are invested in the government, right? When people don't have a say, or when it feels like they don't have a say, then they're not as invested. So then you get civil war. When government is set up in a way that is going to help the poor or help people in their times of need, things go well. When the government is set up just like in Rome or in the Han Empire, when it's set up where the government is taking a lot of the money and not helping in times of famine or climate change or whatever, then you get civil war. And these are similarities. What are the contrasting pieces? Rome has a huge professional military, professional enough that this is the first professional military that we get. And they're an amazing force, right? The Han Dynasty disbands their military so that when you have a civil war, they can't stop that uprising. Okay. They both have the two empires, they split the empire in half. The problem is that the Roman Empire is so much bigger that the western half of the empire kind of dies on the vine. In China, the empires are in neighboring city-states right next door to each other. Okay. And so you still have a centralized government, whereas the Roman Empire had grown so much that the Western Empire couldn't be sustained with the lack of resources. Okay. So any other similarities that you see that I'm missing between the two? I'm gonna be asking you about a question about this on the exam in 3 weeks, and so I hope that this is fairly clear. We'll talk more about it as we move through, but I think that what's important to understand is that these empires grow at a very quick pace when times are good. At times, in times of prosperity, at times they take that money, set it aside for times of famine. Later, in both of them, in both empires, they don't. Instead, they have bloated bureaucracies that then they have to pay those people instead of helping their own people, right? Instead of helping farmers, artisans, things of that nature. Okay. I would suggest that we are in one of those times in the United States right now, right? Like right now, we really need, some people really need some help, right? But instead, what we've done is we've blown the deficit out of, I mean, it's for years, Republicans and Democrats have argued over the deficit. And now here we really need to help people and we can't do it, right? We're in such a bad way when it comes to the deficit. So we're not unlike either of these empires that did the exact same thing, that when you are in trouble, we should be helping the people who are actually making the country run, but instead we're paying exorbitant amounts to our bloated bureaucracy. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to make a comparison so that you understand, right, where these people were at times of their fall, or times when civil war broke out. Okay, so those are the two empires at the time. Two things that we need to talk about. Hopefully you've done the reading. If you haven't, take this week to do the reading. Maybe reading on Friday. No class on Friday again. Okay. So don't be here Friday. I will not be here. If you have any questions, please email me, give me a call, stop by my office. I will chat with you all later. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thanks. You too.